Welcome to Fireside Philosophy. This is episode 2 of the series, and today I'm joined by my guest, Mr. Kevin Tocci, Executive Director of Abington CAM. How are you doing today, sir?
We're doing good, sir.
Good. That's awesome. I'm so happy to finally have you on the show, or on a show. So I can't wait to talk to you. Today we're going to be talking about the art of flexibility. I'm excited to talk about this topic. Definitely one that we all need. We all need to be flexible these days with an ever-changing world.
I would ask you if you're asking in regards to physically, mentally, or with one's schedule.
Oh, good question. So, physical flexibility is something that is a little difficult for some, but I think flexibility in this instance would be more regarding one's schedule, or being mentally flexible, being able to change and adapt to the situation and not kind of get stuck in your way when everything else is changing.
I definitely agree.
Yeah.
I think that's how I've been able to navigate life. Mm-hmm. Of course, you usually don't realize these things. I think your life's experiences help you be able to figure that out. And more times than not, when I was younger, you want to try to squeeze or fit so much into your life.
Yeah.
But then realize that you can only do so much. Same thing with if you're trying to accomplish something. Being able to work with other people with what we do here.
Right.
Being flexible with our schedule, being adaptable.
Yeah.
I feel helps to be able to get the job done. It's also a good customer service motto.
Right. Yeah, of course. In any business situation, being flexible is very important. And anytime you have a lot on your plate, a lot on your schedule, having to rearrange things can sometimes be annoying. It can sometimes be frustrating. But sometimes that's just what you got to do. You got to be able to say, how can I work this out? How can I change this to accomplish that? And kind of go from there. When has flexibility really paid off for you? When has being flexible really helped you, maybe with this job or with one of your many other jobs? What's an instance for you that flexibility has been really important in success?
I think flexibility has been important in many areas, especially when it comes to productions, when it comes to working with folks. If you're trying to, do as much, to fit as much into a day.
Yeah.
Being flexible, being able to move your schedule around is one way. I've had instances where we've had multiple productions booked.
Of course.
And being able to at least build into your schedule maybe a little bit of a buffer, move things around. We've had where there's instances, life happens sometimes. Someone might get into a car accident on their way to your studio or wherever you're going to be doing the production. Being able to move things around, being patient with folks and people's dispositions has helped and paid off in many aspects. That's just one instance. Yeah,
sure. I think another big part of flexibility is, like you said, patience and also organization. Because I feel like if you're not organized, it's kind of hard to be flexible, right? If you're unorganized and you have, a busy schedule and you have things all over the place, it's kind of hard to be flexible and still be successful. Because then, maybe that's when you start sacrificing one thing for another. Where if you're organized and then you're flexible, you're able to more prioritize, maybe move something to another time and get more accomplished. So I would say patience and organization is a big component of being flexible.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. Being someone who plans in advance, also having a fallback plan.
Yeah.
I've done multiple forms of media, whether it's in front of the cameras, behind the cameras. I've also done work in radio.
Yep.
And being flexible, having a plan. I've had times where the first organized plan, the first thing that we've planned out had to be scrapped because something had happened. We had a plan B, we had a plan C.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have a plan D as long as you're able to accomplish the end goal, as long as you're able to complete the mission.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, that's what's most important, and I feel like flexibility is all about getting there. It's not, people who aren't flexible might see, plan A as the only plan, and that it's rigid and it has to get done that way. But oftentimes, with that mindset, not everything gets completed. So I think flexibility is super important. And we can kind of get into this year with COVID. Obviously, flexibility has become even more important because not only do you have to worry about, availability in general of people in maybe like a production or in any other line of work, that you're relying on other people. But now you have to take into account that someone could get contact traced, someone could be exposed, someone might have to stay home for whatever reason. So in that case, you have to be even more flexible because you never know when that could happen, and it could happen to anyone. So that's definitely an interesting component to how flexibility has become even more prevalent recently.
I think that's an excellent example. We all have had to find a way to, I think as a society, to adapt. We're so used to being on the go, going from point A to point B, and then maybe returning point A. We could do that for, since last March of 2020. As a studio, we've had to find ways to still provide content, still find ways to, if there are going to be, the municipality still had to run. There were still services that were being provided, and this organization had to find ways to, had to find systems or find other modes of producing information to share with its residents right here in Abington. And we were fortunate to be able to do that, and that was with collaborating, working with other access centers, and that's the one thing that I feel that we were fortunate is that everybody was trying to accomplish the same mission. So if somebody had discovered something, it was quickly shared.
Cool.
Another, for instance, the many sports. You look here, Abington loves their sports.
Oh yeah.
They love their sports, high school sports, football, baseball, basketball, soccer, you name it across the board. And we had to find ways for folks to be able to see their children performing. And we had to do it in a time where you couldn't be in attendance.
Right.
And being flexible and finding ways to do that as an organization, we were able to accomplish that.
Yeah, and what's interesting about flexibility is sometimes it can even breed like success in its own right. Great example here is Abington's Got Talent. Abington's Got Talent is a show that we did, which was a direct catalyst of COVID. We were all in our homes, we were having virtual intern meetings, and we had got a few shows going that, maybe if we were still doing our other routine shows, this new special thing that we were able to do might not have happened. So when being flexible, sometimes more opportunities arise for you as well. Because Abington's Got Talent was something really special that we got to do. And I think it turned out great, and it got a lot of people involved, and a lot of people got to kind of entertain themselves, and then viewers got to be entertained watching it. I think that was great. So sometimes being flexible in a difficult situation can pay off in a big way.
I would ask you a question.
Yeah.
Is there a point when one shouldn't be so flexible? Knowing that we live in a day and an age where, there has to be a point where you go, okay, this is where we need to stop.
That's a great question. Definitely flexibility has its limits, like everything. You don't want to just always adapt to the situation around you, and you don't want to be the person always being flexible and like stepping out of the way when things are happening. Sometimes, you do have to say, well, we want this to happen, so we're going to make it happen, and we're not going to change the situation, we're going to change the situation to fit our needs. Sometimes that has to happen. Maybe you don't think you have enough time, and you can, push things around and make more time, opposed to just, saying, oh, I don't have enough time, looks like I'll cancel today. So I think that's almost another part of flexibility in itself is kind of, there's almost like two sides of it. There's flexibility where it's like, okay, you're flexible to like back up and say, I'm not gonna do this thing, I'm gonna change according to surroundings. And then, there's another aspect of flexibility where, all right, I'm not gonna let the surroundings, obviously, instead of me changing the surroundings, I'm gonna do what I'm doing and try and change my surroundings. So I guess that would almost be not flexible in a way, because you're not gonna change and you're gonna attempt to change the surroundings. So that's kind of difficult because there's definitely times where, maybe it's hard to be flexible. You don't want to adapt, you don't want to change. There's things that you really want to do the way you want to do them, and then when you have to do them differently, it's not always as exciting or as favorable. So,
what's interesting you say that is when we become accustomed to doing something or using something or how we live, sometimes change is hard.
Yeah.
Change is not necessarily for all of us. If there's something that we favor doing or something that we like doing in a way, and then that it ceases to be available,
yeah,
you have to go, oh my God, what do I do?
Right.
And find a way to have other modes or other things that you can fall back on to be able to continue on.
Right. And I think kind of an instance of people not being like 100% flexible is, we got to come back to school this year. We could have just gone, I guess the full flexible way would have been stay remote through the rest of the year, wait till everything dies out. But, we kind of planted our feet in the ground and said, we're gonna make this work and we're gonna be flexible in that way. And instead of just working, avoiding the situation, we're gonna find ways to make it work. And we've been able to come to school. We now have all the students in the school at the same time, which has been so nice to see everyone again, especially in my senior year. Before we go. So I think that's like one way you could see it as us not being flexible when it comes to kind of yielding to the circumstances. Instead, we're taking the circumstances and making them be flexible for us,
Right. I agree in regards to what, the students, the class of 2020 had to endure at the tail end of their year. And your class of 2021.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy, but I feel that as a group of seniors that you are all adaptable.
Yeah.
And we're able to, I don't know if 20 or 30 years ago, the individuals who were, going through, education, whether whatever grade it was in, if they would have been able to have the opportunities to transition from in-person to a virtual setting.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that this year has definitely made me more flexible. I'm someone who, does like to do things like the way I'm used to, and I'm always open to trying new things, but I find it a lot easier to kind of, I had my schedule down. I have 2 jobs, so I was really enjoying both of them, and then once COVID happened, everything kind of changed, and then like with school, things were rapidly changing, and I've definitely learned to become more flexible and go with the flow a lot more, and I think that's like a great skill to have. So even though like with COVID has done so much harm, but I think it's definitely taught me to be much more flexible, and I think that'll be really useful going forward.
I would say this is that being able to have the ability to adapt and change as you're doing things, not only for your own self happiness, but if you can make others satisfied or please them if they're seeking something, I think that's just as rewarding.
Yeah.
Is being able to, if someone comes and says, I know we were going to do this, do you have other options to be able to accomplish this, that you can?
Yeah, opposed to saying, no, I got no other options, this way or no way. So,
sure.
Yeah.
And I think you can apply the principle to most things. Eating. Some people are picky eaters.
Yeah.
That's okay. Me, unfortunately, you can see that I'm someone who I love to, have a good meal. It's obviously a little bit A little extra. I mean, how many cameras are pointing on me right now? They say it adds 10 pounds.
Yeah.
But the idea is that because my palate is, I'm willing to sample and try so many different things, it gives me the flexibility to be able to try or eat anything instead of just saying, oh, well, you don't have this on your menu, well then I can't eat here. I'm willing to try other things. So it's a principle that can be applied to many life's lessons.
Yeah. It's definitely not just like in the professional field. Flexibility can be used in like all parts of your life. I think even, like people always say, oh, like I want to get into like an instrument or like meditation or like working out. Like a part of flexibility is working stuff like that, like in your schedule, if that's something you really want to do. I know it can be hard to change a rigid schedule. Sometimes it's like, you wake up, you go to school or work, and you come home and then you want to, used to being done, relaxing, whatever it may be. So being flexible with your schedule to add things that you want to do, or maybe subtract things, maybe you want to watch less TV, maybe something like that. I think changing your schedule is a big part of flexibility and your everyday life. I think that's big.
I think the other part to add to that is just having the ability to work smarter,
yes,
not harder. And sometimes we, by nature, will try to work harder.
Yeah.
And it takes a bit before we go, oh, there's a better way to be able to accomplish this.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a big thing too, kind of going at problems in multiple ways. I'd say is also part of flexibility, opposed to saying I'm just gonna, brute force this problem. Kind of being flexible, taking in like other options in situations like that is definitely important.
If I, as the guest, can ask you a question.
Of course, ask away.
What has been a point in your life that you fondly remember where being flexible, being willing to offer options during a particular time has helped you greatly?
Yeah. So, again, I would probably bring up Abington's Got Talent, where we had a lot of shows going on here. The Weekly Wave was in full spin. We had two spin-offs of The Weekly Wave, 2 segments. We had Guessing It and Movie Time with Matt and Derek. And we were really in a rhythm. We had guests every week. We had things going on all the time. And we really wanted to continue that. But when COVID hit, we kind of were presented with this situation where we could either try and continue what we were doing in a different way and just push through and continue what we were doing, or we could be flexible and maybe try something new. And there were a lot of options there. So then we began to brainstorm and we came up with Abington's Got Talent. And I would say that was one of the biggest instances of us being flexible. It wasn't something we were comfortable with. We were super nervous about that show. Oh, will we get submissions? We don't want to like hurt people's feelings when we're judging. We don't, all these things that were uncomfortable. And, we did it and we were flexible, and opposed to doing what we knew, we tried something different. And I'm glad we did. So. Do
you feel that being versatile and being willing to transition from being in a setting to doing it virtually, do you feel that has benefited you to date?
Yeah, I would say so. I think a lot of the world a lot of things happen virtually now. I was talking to a teacher and he was saying that, he doesn't know if snow days are going to be a thing anymore. You might just go online on Teams, and then isn't that crazy, right? So that's another flexibility thing. Are you willing to give that up? But I guess you get extra time off in the summer.
Being a survivor of the blizzard of '78, and I say that where, there have been blizzards since, we relish those snow days and digging out. I think any kid that is able to take a day or two off because Mother Nature blessed us with some white stuff.
It's exciting.
It's exciting. Hopefully they'll still have snow days, but we'll see. So. We'll definitely see.
But yeah, we'll see. It's very interesting how that works and how, we are in this ever-changing world, and things that existed then don't exist now. And that's part of flexibility. And things that we have now are going away. And something as big as a pandemic that affects us all as humans, it's definitely something that will set change. And the more change it's going to make, the more flexible we'll have to be. Because if we're not, we might not be able to be as successful as we are. If we're really flexible and we kind of take the situation, analyze it, and say, how can I work around this? How can I do what I want to do the best way I want to do it in these circumstances?
I would be willing to say that the keys to the success that I've seen throughout my career, throughout my time here, throughout the pandemic, has because of the willingness to be, I don't want to keep using the word flexible, but
Right.
but to be able to look at many different ways to be able to accomplish a task, and if something didn't work or something wasn't amenable to it, that we were able to still accomplish the goal and make it, and again, make our viewers happy.
Yeah, and I think we've absolutely done that. And you know, you have to make modifications, and that's another part of being flexible. We have made a lot of modifications. We wear masks, we have hand sanitizing stations, we have temperature checks, we have a sign-in sheet now. We've altered a lot of the sets of our different shows to make sure that they're safe. And it's all worked out. You know, it really shows resilience when you can be flexible in that way.
Again, if I can be the guest
Go
asking
for
the
it.
question, I know that
Question
you are.
you want, no
I
worries.
know that you are an avid filmmaker.
Yes.
How has flexibility played a role when you are shooting, or when you were doing a production? How has it benefited and helped you over the years?
Yeah, so over the years, flexibility, let's see. So obviously scheduling. No matter any production you're doing, you know this, scheduling can be difficult with a lot of people, and especially a lot of busy people. So being able to say, oh, I really want to do it this day, but I have to do it this day, and this day will be just as good, you know, that works. Or, you know, I really want to do it at this location, but I have to do it at this location instead. Seeing stuff like that pay off, like maybe my second choice for a location, or my second choice for a day, oh, it rained that day, and now this day it's nice. When, you know, you're flexible, and instead of canceling, you take that second choice, and then it turns out maybe even better than the first choice would have been, I think that's the most satisfying part of being flexible in that industry, you know?
I think sometimes I've seen it many times where someone was stubborn and wanted to stick to the original. And again, it's an artist, it's an individual's way of wanting to do something, and if that's how they conduct their lives, and that's happiness for them. But where it's, you know, they wanted to, you know, they wanted something bad enough, and they never achieved it. They had to take something lesser or do something different. And again, I feel that there's satisfaction in being able to go a different route to be able to, you know, realize your end goal.
Yeah, and then when that different route pays off, and you know, it's sometimes even better than the original, when you're watching that final product, you know, that's what you think of when you see that shot or you see that scene, and you're like, I'm glad I did it that way. You know, I'm glad it worked out the way it did. That's always very satisfying.
And I know you've referenced a couple of times doing Abington's Got Talent.
Yes.
But there have been other, you've had you know, another production that you've also been doing, and through flexibility, you know, there's been times where you didn't have all of you, but you still have been able to still pull it together.
Yes. So
And again, that's another example.
Yeah, and going off of that, so, you know, the Senior Artist Podcast, we had it one way, you know, where we were doing it virtually. I feel like another part of flexibility is when something's fine, when you don't necessarily have to change, being flexible for the sake of being flexible. You know, we were content with the Senior Artist Podcast, but then, you know, we said, why not more? You know, why not bring this in studio? It's safe to do so now. Why not try and up the production value even more? And, you know, we did it. So I think a cool part of flexibility is that you don't have to wait for a pandemic or for it to hit you in the face. You can kind of step out of your comfort zone and be flexible, and that can be really rewarding. And I think that's really cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was very insightful. Yeah,
it was an honor, and I want to actually say is that I've enjoyed working with the class of 2021. That your group has been exceptional, as was the prior group, and thank you for the privilege of working with you to be able to do programs like this, Senioritis, the Weekly Wave, Movie Time, Guessing It, all the great programs that we have here that are generated by students and student interns.
Yeah, and thank you so much for inspiring and helping us along every step of the way for those productions. Takes everyone to do it, and I think they come out great. And I'm glad we have shows like this. Awesome. Well, thank you for watching episode 2 of Fireside Philosophy. I hope you enjoyed, and tune in for episode 3 to see the next show. Thank you.